Hey, I wanted to give a little context around what you're about to watch. It's a talk that I gave at an event here in Atlanta called Entrepreneur Business Live, and the theme of the talk was courage. So I get a little personal about what courage meant to me at the beginning of my career as an entrepreneur and how that was redefined over time and how I had to choose to live a life with intention over impulse because sheer passion and will just wasn't getting me to the next step in my career. So I'd love for you to listen to the whole thing. There's a Q&A session afterwards with a few questions, so be sure to stay tuned to the very end for those questions. And I hope you really enjoy this and take something out of it. Thank you. First of all, thank you for inviting me out, and thanks to Richard for putting this on. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here. And for those who don't know me, I am Randall Blizzard. I run a video production company and a content agency. And I started doing that full-time, self-employed in 2014. And I'll get into that story a little more throughout this journey. But I want to talk about courage because that's the theme of this event. So what does courage mean? What does it mean to me specifically? I feel like courage is a word that we far too often let be defined by other people. We see other people's experiences or courageous acts, and we shape our definition of what courage means based off of these observations. And I think that could potentially be a mistake because I think courage has to be something that you define wholeheartedly within yourself. And that's how you truly become courageous. So how did I define what courage means for me? First and foremost, excuse my language, I had to call myself out on my shit. I had to really sit down and say, what are my shortcomings? And to be honest, one of those is I am naturally probably a little lazier than I should be. If I don't have a task list and a to-do list and a project coming up or a video production job, I can work super hard doing those things. But if those things aren't going on, I'm not really at my core the type of person to just get up and create a list of what I should do. To take that a step further, my natural state is a little more pessimistic. And this took a lot of self-awareness to get to this point of realizing this. I was wondering why, when I wasn't active and when I wasn't pursuing a job or the next client or following my passion of video production, why was there this constant kind of negative voice? And I just had to accept the fact that I'm naturally more pessimistic if I'm not actively striving to be positive and optimistic. So it started with calling myself out on my shit. And I had to do this in order to realize what being the best version of me and living the most excellent version of me could look like. So I want to go back to 2014. January 1st is when I went full-time, self-employed. And I wanted to go full-time before that, but I got diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. Joy and I were talking about this. I was at a job at the time that had health insurance, really great health insurance, and a set salary. So because of the laws at the time for a pre-existing condition, I could not leave that job. Now at this time, I knew how much it meant to me to pursue my dreams and my passion and to be a full-time entrepreneur. I had to do that, and I think I really had the heart of an entrepreneur. I knew what I wanted to do, I knew my dreams, and I wanted to relentlessly pursue it. Because of this medical condition, I couldn't leave this day job of mine. 2014, the laws changed. I was able to get my own health insurance, and everyone around me and those closest to me thought I was crazy to leave a set salary and paid for insurance to no guaranteed money whatsoever, and instantly raising my expenses just to provide insulin to my insulin pump here. It's not a pager, I promise. It's an insulin pump. Everyone thinks it's a pager for some reason. But so in my first year as a full-time self-employed entrepreneur, video production owner, I made $750. Now, I had savings, I knew this was my dream. I knew what I had to do to have a rainy day fund, even though there were a lot of rainy days in that first year. I made $750. Year 2 and year 3, things changed. We landed a few big clients. We had a few big opportunities in the film world. And things were going really, really great. But probably around year 3, year 4, I felt a plateau. I felt like I wasn't climbing anymore. And I started to think, why is that? And I realized that I thought that my sheer passion and will and just my talent, I was naturally talented behind the camera, I thought that that would help me reach ultimate success and fulfillment and happiness. For whatever reason, I was just certain that sheer will alone and passion could help me reach the success level that I wanted to reach. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that I've made as an entrepreneur. So I said I had to call myself out on my shit. I'm doing it now too. I think being courageous is being able to be a little vulnerable and say, look, I made these mistakes. And they plateaued my career in a way that really rocked my world a little bit. So out of passion and out of will and out of just sheer talent comes impulsive decisions. This is where things started getting really interesting for me, because I realized how important it was for me to start living a life with intention over impulse. I was lucky enough that my impulse decisions had been right enough to reach a certain level of success, to do well, to acquire more gear, to have an office space and a couple of employees at the time. My impulses got me to that point, but I just was not reaching the next level of success. I had to live a life with intention over impulse. So what did that look like? Well, first I had to sit down and say, who do I want to be in 5 years? You could do this too. I implore you to do it, to write down, who do I want to be? It can be 6 months from now, a year from now, it doesn't matter. I said, who do I want to be in 5 years? And I broke that up into 3 categories: physically, mentally, and spiritually. Within each of these columns, I started writing down the ideal version of myself. Below that, I started writing down action items, what I had to cut out of my life, what I had to add to my life, but more importantly, check-in dates. Check in every other Monday on my physical, if I'm working out enough, if I'm following my goals and my intentions in the physical realm. Same thing with mentally and spiritually. And when I was doing this, I realized how much sacrifice this was going to take. I realized how much time that I would have to spend separate late night at my office from my wife and my family. I realized that I would have to ruin some relationships that I had that weren't the healthiest at that moment. But I had to make the decision. I had to step up and say, what's more important? Me living with intention to get to the person I desire to be in 5 years, or me keeping things at peace with everyone around me? I thought I really knew what sacrifice meant, because over the years, through living with impulse, I did ruin a few relationships. Some business and money got involved, some things went south. There was a lot of, my wife and I got married, and 2 months later, I left for 3.5 months to shoot a film. So there's a lot of sacrifice, but that was all kind of outward facing. That was affecting relationships with other people. When you start to silence your impulse, you're sacrificing what feels good internally. It feels good to have a cookie when you know you should probably have a salad. It feels good to sleep in when you intended on going on a 3-mile run that morning. Living with intention over impulse means that you have to be willing to sacrifice what feels good for you, not anybody else. It's all an internal game. It became a game of me versus me. Living with intention became a complete understanding of that's what it would take for me to be the best version of myself, to live with excellence. So the question became, knowing how much fear and judgment and sacrifice that I would have to make, the question became, do I have the courage to truly live with intention over impulse, and to put in the effort to do that and actually see that through? And I gotta tell you, I really am enjoying the path that I'm on, because I feel so good internally about this life and this path with intention over impulse.
How did you when you were hit with that, after you made the right decision, after you followed that intuition and that calling, when life hit you and all of the things were like, you made the wrong decision, this wasn't the right thing, persevere?
So with perseverance, it became a deep understanding of realizing that life is a struggle, that the more that you grow as a person and as an entrepreneur, and the more you make an impact on other people's life, the more weight you're naturally going to carry. Are you made to carry that weight? That's where the courageous part really comes into play. You have to carry that weight and be able to take more weight and be able to climb a slippery slope with that weight attached to you. And that's just it. That's what this is about. The key differentiator is understanding that there is no finish line. When you say, this is the best version of myself, this is who I want to be, you should be constantly striving for that. If you reach that in 5 years, make another 5-year plan. Because you hit the nail on the head. You take that step and then you get hit with life. You got to embrace that hit, soak up every single punch that you take, because that's where you learn the most out of these struggles. That's where I really get to see what I'm made of. Like I said, I understand that I'm naturally a little more pessimistic. For whatever reason, call it my DNA, upbringing, I don't know. I'm naturally a little more pessimistic. Now when life pushes me down, I get to silence that pessimistic side of me even more. And I get to do that because I'm choosing to live with intention.
How did you handle maybe some of the people who, you felt were opposed to you taking that lead, going out? What were those conversations like? How did you handle that?
They were, yeah, they were very blunt. So, there was people very close to me within my family and my significant other and some people that were with me in business that thought I was making the leap too early or didn't understand why they knew that I should risk leaving the salary and then risk making more money because of just following my passion. But when you're talking about $500 a month instantly in medical expenses just to be able to live, most people find that hard to get behind. When you go from making a salary to no money, but your expenses go from roughly low for medical stuff to extremely high. And it was first having a very real conversation with myself to know how I needed to communicate that. And how I communicated it was, look, I am so miserable being trapped at this job or feeling trapped. I know that it is my purpose in life to help businesses and people grow through creative content and conversation. So having those conversations was part of my purpose. And I just had to have very real conversations, say, look, I have to do this in order to be fulfilled and happy. The money stuff will be figured out, but I know that I'm meant to be an entrepreneur and build whatever I'm trying to build for my own life, and I have to do that. And if I can't, you're going to get the most unhappy version of me, and that's not good for any relationship.
Any other questions?
What was your discovery process for finding your purpose?
What was my discovery process for finding my purpose? It was a lot of books, listening to a lot of motivational videos. It all goes back to being kind of naturally pessimistic. Like I have to try very hard and put a lot of intention behind motivating myself, being optimistic and being positive. And through doing that, I realized how important it would be for me to write down my purpose every day, which then led to me saying, what is my purpose? And I kind of reverse engineered what I like doing. I like having intimate, long-form conversations about just people and life in general, usually more related to entrepreneur and people's journey. And I like creating content to help those type of people grow. And those people have businesses. So I just kind of reversed it. I said, my purpose is to help businesses and people grow through creative content and conversation. Hey, I would love to know what you took out of this talk and how you define courage along your entrepreneurial and self-development journey. So please jump into the conversation in the comment section. And if you enjoyed this video, smash the like button and hit subscribe. And remember, you get what you give, so give good.